Hello. Sorry, no sound.
Hi.
I hit the button and nothing happened.
I hate when that happens. That's like every day of my life, though.
Yeah, you hit the button and nothing happens.
Well, we'll just repeat everything we just said. Verbatim, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where we got you out of internet jail. And
right, and then you put yourself in.
I put myself in internet jail. Well,
it happens.
They always said I had a voice for video, so I guess you saw that happen just now. I was trying to flip that joke on its head. I didn't know if it worked or not.
I don't know. Sure. Why not?
Well, anyway, again, welcome to the Crimes Against Folk podcast. My name is Edward Williams.
I'm Ashley Norton.
Thank you both for, actually more audiences today. Thank you all for joining us today. We are coming to you live from our separate studios in California and Arizona. So what you are seeing and hearing is live right now. I'll put on my PBS voice for this. This show comes to you with the help of Jamulus for our real-time audio communication, Lyrics Broadcaster for video, Restream for streaming to multiple outlets, OBS for live production, and the support of viewers like you.
That was amazing.
I've watched enough PBS in my lifetime. I know how this goes.
Seriously impressed. I feel like you should do voiceovers.
Oh, I haven't graduated to that yet.
We'll talk to Jim Birdsall. We'll
Yay! This podcast is brought to you again live every Sunday on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and BandLab. We did get that working finally. And we edit this down into an audio version that you can hear on Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, and Apple Podcasts. So you can subscribe there, follow us on Spotify, leave a like and a review if you dig what you hear. That way we can get a little bit more visibility, hopefully, on the podcast, and we can get more folks listening.
Absolutely.
So if you don't know who we are Witherward. We've been a touring duo, international touring duo, for the better part of 6 years. And we've always wanted to do a podcast, and so we decided to just do one. But, of course, the issue is we're both in separate locations, so through the help of the aforementioned software and our lovely audience, we are able to make this happen and also bring in wonderful guests like we're going to bring in today. We have Bruce Wawrzyniak, president of Now Hear This Entertainment,
Yay.
a veteran podcaster, an absolutely wonderful man. He's super helpful, and we're hoping to hear some stories and insight from him today.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I love Bruce. He's so great. He's such an amazing podcast host too. You guys, we'll talk some more about his show, and we'll ask him some questions about his show as well. But it's really a fantastic show. I've been a guest on it a few times, I think, by now, and Ed as well, and Witherword, and we've run into him a few times at some conferences and things like that, and it's just always makes us smile really big when we see Bruce. He's such a nice guy and such a great host.
Yeah, for sure. He's really great. He's been giving us lots of great advice on what we should do, so we're trying to implement that as quickly as we can.
I mean, he's kind of a big deal, you guys. This is a big deal.
We'll give you the official spiel when it's time for him to come on, but we're trying to talk him up right now because he's fantastic. So please stick around for that interview.
Around, and Ed's also going to talk about producing your own music, specifically. God, that's hard to say. Specifically, the distribution side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've been producing our own albums for since forever. So we've made 6 so far, and we've recorded them all. And we have some things we want to talk about in future podcasts about how we go about producing our own albums, but today we specifically want to talk about distribution, so stay tuned for the tips and tricks segment as well, because you might learn something interesting, or if you're a musician, you might get some interesting tips on stuff to do.
Woohoo!
Yay.
Yeah, we like to peel back the curtain every now and again.
Yeah, I feel like, especially nowadays, I mean, musicians, venues, or people who are just bored at home and they've always wanted to learn to be a musician. They finally have the tools to do it and the time to do it. It's like, we don't mind sharing what we know. So have shared with us what they know, and we're grateful for it. So the more that we can be communicative and the more that we can learn from each other, the better off we're all going to be and growing together.
I agree. We kind of touched on that with Auburn when we interviewed her, because she gave us a vital piece of information that really helped us pull a lot of this together. And when the pandemic hit, I mean, I think that's what everyone was scrambling to find some cool information that'll help them keep doing what they're doing. And everybody's done really fun stuff. So it's important to get that info around and make sure that people that people don't feel embarrassed to ask, or that they don't feel left out because other people are figuring out stuff and not sharing what they know. So we try to pull that back, even for our audience. I've witnessed Penn and Teller do this with their Magic Act, and I always love it. I don't care how, I'm never going to be able to do that cups and balls trick that they do, but I've watched that video a million times and it never gets old. So we're trying to pull back a little bit of the curtain on what we do. So hopefully our audience and other musicians can appreciate it.
I know. I mean, I feel like so many times I look at something and I go, God, there's got to be some secret behind that people are just not sharing. And sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. But we don't need that secret here. We're all friends here. So ask away. We do have a Q&A section at the end. So if you throw some questions out now, we'll try to remember to answer them down the road as well.
Yeah.
But that being said, we also do like to perform some music in this podcast. So how about we do a song?
We can do a song.
Yay.
We have one queued up. This is a classic performed. I need to look up who actually wrote it, but it's performed. This version is performed by the Ink Spots, and it's called "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire." I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart. but one desire, and that one is you. No other will do. I've lost all ambition for worldly acclaim. I just want to be the one you love. And with your admission that you feel the same, I'll have reached the goal I'm dreaming of. Believe me, I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart. Well, I don't want to set the world on fire, honey. I love you too much. I just want to start a great big flame down in your heart. You see, way down inside of me, darling, I have only one desire, and that one desire is you. And I know nobody else ain't gonna do. I've lost all ambition for worldly acclaim. I just want to be the one you love. And with your admission that you feel the same, I'll have reached the goal I'm dreaming of. Believe me, I don't want to set the world on fire. I just want to start a flame in your heart.
Nice, Ed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ed does play a beautiful guitar there, huh? So that's actually, we told the full story in last week's episode of Crimes Against Folk, and that's kind of where we got our podcast title from, Crimes Against Folk, because of the fact that we are indeed a folk duo, folk-ish duo. I don't know if you want to put a label on it, but we've gotten in trouble a couple times because Ed plays electric guitar, and that is a crime against folk. So that's the short of it.
The electric is here to ruin your folk music.
Again with the voiceovers. You could be a vampire too? Wow, I'm impressed.
I've been watching a lot of What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, that's true, you have.
So it kind of grew on me. It's a good show, by the way. You guys need to watch it.
That's like when I hang around Erica Sunshine Lee too long and all of a sudden I perfect my southern accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so true. That kind of thing just grows on you, you know. It kind of infiltrates you and you want to do it. So that's for sure. When I remember when I did live in Nashville, and I lived there for 8 years, you know, I noticed I started saying thank you with a tiny bit of a southern accent, like thank you. I very slowly started to morph into that.
Well, we both listened back to recordings of ourselves and we're like,
man.
I sound like a country artist. I didn't even know I sang with a country accent.
What was it? I listened to the very first recording we did of Haunted by Me that we did for the video. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, you're singing with a country accent. I didn't even notice it at the time.
No, me neither. In fact, I used to be like, God, people who come to Nashville and sing with country accents are so stupid. They don't even have one. I don't do that. And then I totally was. I didn't even know it.
I didn't remember it.
I retract. That's because it was like light. It was so light compared to everybody else that you
Yeah.
just, I think it's just something you don't really notice.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've started using y'all more as opposed
Oh
to
yeah, we all did that.
yeah, that's one affectation I kept. Even
You still do say that.
I still say that. Well, it's a nice. Actually, it's kind of a nice way to refer to a group of people or a person who you don't know their gender. It's kind of a nice way if you don't want to assume.
Yeah.
It's a good way to do it. So.
Yep.
Um.
That's true. I like it. I like y'all. Thanks, y'all. Hey, y'all. I don't really say it anymore because I feel like a phony now that I'm not there. If I say it. I don't know. It's fun. I miss it. Maybe I'll bring it back.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. So show and tell time, eh?
Yay!
Yeah. Let's do
All right,
that.
y'all.
All right.
I'm already doing it.
Who went first last time? I can't remember. There's only two of us, and I can't remember.
But since we're talking about Nashville, maybe we should segue into mine.
No, that's a good idea. All right. So I will bring up
Although I can't remember yours.
Ashley's photo. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll
So the
bring
show
it
and
up.
tell segment of our show is when Ed and I show each other and you guys and y'all a photo from our past, which we've been like Ed said, we've been on tour for 5-6 years solid, and before that we spent many years in Nashville. So we have a lot of photos and a lot of stories to share. So we thought this was a good way to start off our Storyteller podcast. So I picked this photo. Have you shared it yet?
I will right now.
By the way,
There it is.
yeah, by the way, Ed and I can't see each other. We can only hear each other.
Yeah, we can hear each other.
If you're new to the podcast.
I can see Ashley, but she can't see me. Unless you're watching. I can't remember if you're watching the monitor or not, but
So this photo, I have brown hair. And it comes from Nashville.
Woohoo.
And it is the very first year that Witherword was in existence. And Ed and I decided to form our folk duo, and we both played acoustic guitars at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that because we wanted to just kind of tour and have something easy where we could have a small setup and just throw our guitars in the back of the car and just start touring. And that's what we did for 5 years. And we are 6 years. But at the very beginning, we were in Nashville kind of forming our duo and getting music recorded and letting people get used to the fact that we're a duo now, because everyone knew Ed from other projects and me from other projects. But I think that us joining forces was fairly new to people. So as we were doing that, we made our very first EP. Now, Ed and I have made a lot of EPs and albums in solo and various projects throughout the years, like a lot.
Yeah.
And one thing that a lot. Should we say it again?
A lot.
A lot. One thing that we have in common is our loathe for CD release parties.
Yeah. They're not a fun time.
No.
Not for us anyway.
It's like a wedding. I don't know. Maybe you guys liked your weddings. I've never had one, but I almost did, and I did not enjoy the process, which is the problem. Like for me and for Ed, and I think a lot of I'm joking. I know a lot of you really enjoyed your weddings. That's fantastic, and I think a lot of you really enjoyed your CD release parties, which is also fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
This girl and that guy, no, stressful. They always feel really underwhelming to me. Like I get there and then we have it, and like either not as many people showed up as you had hoped or expected, or they did, and then like you didn't get the thing you were expecting to get out of it, or you didn't get as many reviews. I don't know. They just always feel like a little bit of a disappointment to me. So we decided that instead of doing a CD release party or an EP release party, I guess, because it was 7 songs on our first project.
6. Yep.
Okay. We were going to have a listening party, which is what we did at the house that I lived in Nashville on Foothill Drive. And we had the best time.
Oh, it was great.
So much fun. It was maybe 20 people showed up, you think?
Yeah,
Less?
probably around there. Maybe a little less.
15 to 20. 15 to 20.
to 20.
And we got a cake, or I think our friend Meredith brought us a cake.
Yeah.
And we put out some snacks, and other people brought out snacks. And I was used to having parties. I used to have a lot of parties at that house because it was a big house and I had 4 roommates. So we had we had a studio, and we had a lot of space, like 2 huge and the house was huge. It was enormous, and it was just kind of like, it was a really cool house. It was just something about it. Just a lot of people liked coming over, so we often had people over. So it felt very normal for me to host a little party there. And we just asked everyone to be quiet for the 25 to 30 minutes it took us to press play on our CD. And everybody listened to the album in its entirety. And then afterwards, we hung out. We ate cake and we drank some wine and we chatted with our friends. We passed the guitars around. We jammed. And there was no stress because we didn't care who was going to show up. It didn't matter who was in the audience. It was just like a way for us to celebrate our first release with our closest friends. And it felt like putting the stamp on that, like, okay, we did it. It's out there, and now we're a band, you know? And I think we like to tell people about this a lot because we just totally recommend it. I mean, we did a CD release party for Witherword after we released our album called The Anchor, and all of us afterward, we were like, never, no, why did we do that? We knew better.
It was not a fun time. Like, it was, I mean, we were happy that we had friends come out, and, you know, we had some awesome bands playing, awesome, you know, musicians, but it just, like, for us, you know, the end result just wasn't worth all the effort of wrangling all that together. So, yeah, we I guess we decided to try it because it was our first album, and we were, you know, thinking, oh, well, maybe it'll be different. We have a band now, but it just, no.
Nope. So that photo is a fun memory, and it was also the beginning of Witherword, and it was our time in Nashville, and it was me pretending to take a big bite out of that entire sheet of cake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which also seems like a good time.
Definitely a good time. Meredith brought that cake?
I think so.
I think you're right.
Seems like something she would do.
Yeah.
That's our friend Meredith Bliss. She's
Meredith
still there.
Bliss. She's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my show and tell.
It's a nice story.
Yeah, it's a good memory.
Yeah.
We did another CD release party-ish. It was like half CD release party, half listening party for our latest album. We did it at the Listening Room in Phoenix.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we did. It was still too much. It was too much. Like, we got on the stage and we discussed the album and answered a lot of questions, and I think the stress part came in is like selling the tickets to CD release party. And it was like, anyone going to show up for this? And is this a thing anymore? I think for us, it felt good to just kind of wrap it up and discuss it. But yeah, I think if we do it again, we'll do it kind of more low key like that, like just kind of be at your house and hang out, have some people over, and eat some cake.
Yeah, I highly recommend it for any artist thinking about doing it.
Especially the cake part.
Absolutely, the cake part.
Yeah.
All right, it's my turn, I guess. Yeah.
Go for it.
Throw my photo up there. A couple of you in the chat will be very familiar with this one.
I seriously can't remember what it is, and I'm on a delay, so I see the screen. I'm like patiently waiting for it to arrive. He sent it to me.
I did. So this photo, we took this during the filming of the Dragon video.
Oh yeah.
And this was one of the scenes. This was just before we did one of the scenes, and I just loved this setting so much. It was a really cool photo, and just the pose that Ashley has there with the rolling pin, and the creepy mask, and the apron, and the floral print dress was just kind of perfect in this truly dilapidated kitchen. Was just perfect. So this photo again, was part of the filming of the Dragon music video, and this was done in Cambria, I don't know how you say it, Cambria, California, at a place called Nitwit Ridge. The caretaker there, was his name Michael? I think.
I have no idea.
It's at the end of the video. If you watch the video, I think we put his name in there. Or if Howard, you remember, you can chime in. I can't remember. He described the place as kind of the anti-Hearst Castle. And if you're not familiar with Hearst Castle, it's William Hearst's residence. That's a little ways up the road. But Nitwit Ridge, it was kind of just a unique location. It's it's very run down, and it was kind of constructed by this guy, and he would make parts of the house out of just rubbish that he found, like steps out of beer cans. There was a water heater garden that he had, and a lot of the stuff in there was very run down, but it was a California historical monument, so it gets protection from the state and all that kind of stuff. And I think Howard suggested this place for filming. Is that right?
Yeah. He had just gone on a photography excursion. In fact, I think Howard's watching live right now. I know Barb is, but so maybe he'll correct us. But I believe he just went on a photography excursion, and they got to go around the mansion and take cool pictures. And so he threw the idea out at us to see if we could do a video there.
Yeah. And how much did it cost for us to film there?
I think we had to pay $100.
$100 for 4 hours? 3 hours?
Yeah, 4 hours or whatever it was. The guy was so nice, and we went way over, and he didn't care. He was actually he was holding the reflector, and he was helping out after a while. He became a
photography assistant.
Yeah, he did. So we credited him in the music video, which you can find on our YouTube page. It's called The Dragon.
Yeah, he was super nice, that guy. That was really fun. And so yeah, this was from, like, honestly kind of the first, like, kind of artsy music video that we really had more control over. And it was, Howard was really enthusiastic about getting the right shots and making it all work. And it was a fantastic time. It really was.
Yeah, Howard Ignatius has directed virtually all of our With a Word music videos, and he's absolutely amazing. He's now directing them for the Rockin' Ukes and Distractions, which is his own ukulele band. And we're just endlessly impressed with his work. And this first one was really exciting because I believe it was the first music video, like official music video, because he had done something for us previously, and he's always been an amazing photographer, but he jumped into, I guess, cinematography, and he's in directing. He was so good.
Yeah,
just all the shots are so artistic and just beautiful. So there's really no other eye like Howard's, and yeah, we had a lot of fun doing this video. It was so cool just being in that old house, like basically built out of junk. And I mean, there were toilet seats everywhere, and it said, I think Ed touched, there were beer cans in the walls, and it was just a crazy place.
Yeah, but it's a really cool setting for kind of a creepy music video. So we were very fortunate to be able to get in there. Barb says it's for sale now for $250,000. That's it?
Wow. Yeah, but imagine how much work you have to put in. I mean, I remember being nervous standing in that kitchen with that rolling pin. I was like, is this going to hold us up?
Yeah, neither of us had our tetanus boosters, so we were extra nervous. So
yeah, and it's not like this house is level. I mean, it basically hangs over a cliff.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of floating on this like very possibly termite infested wood. So
yeah,
all yours for just $250,000.
It was really cool, though. It was a very, very fun experience, I have to say.
Yeah.
So, really exciting.
Yeah, I loved it. That was still, I think that's still I don't know if it's my favorite music video of ours or just like the whole story behind it and the magic of it being our first one. We keep trying to outdo it, and I think that's still kind of the fan favorite. But again, I have to wonder if it's for the same reasons or not. But
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's definitely, I think, a lot of fans' favorite music video.
yeah.
I think just because we did a lot of fun editing and a lot of fun stuff in that. So yeah, I think that was a really fun day.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and throw it in the chat, the music video, so you guys can take a look if you want.
And that'll be in the show notes too. So if you go back and read the show notes, there will be a link to that vid in there.
Yep.
But speaking of videos, we're going to show. We're going to do our kind of feature video a little earlier in the show. And this was always one of my favorite conversations between Ashley and I, as, we've had lots of conversations in our travels. And maybe 40% of them we filmed because we were filming for stuff. I don't even remember why we were filming this one.
We used to film a lot of that kind of stuff.
The drive?
The first maybe year or two we were on the road, we would film a lot of stuff, especially when we were having conversations. And I think just to kind of put up as interesting blog pieces, or what we think is interesting, you might think very differently. But this is not a music video, fair warning. This is actually a rant.
Yeah. I think it's a commentary, we'll call it.
Okay.
We'll call it commentary.
Fair.
Because I think, I don't know, I just think like not everybody is going to agree with what we have to say.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
But that's okay.
No.
Opinions make the world go round, right?
Mm-hmm. In fact, you very well might be like, why did you just waste 3 minutes of my time on this, talking about this topic?
You may very well do that. And you can leave a comment below if that's really what you want to do. But
yeah. Hey, we're in a podcast now. We've opened ourselves up to the haters. So,
true enough. True enough.
We fire back. It's all good.
Yeah. So bring it, however you want to do it. But so we're going to play this vid for you now, and it is simply titled "Candy."
Hey everybody. So we're on our way to LA from Las Vegas.
Woohoo!
We had a great time last night at our show at the Hard Rock. We love playing there, and we heard some incredible talent, which was awesome for us.
That was fantastic.
Galvanized souls and playing there. And
Maxwell
we heard some
Fresh,
incredible talent. Yeah, check them out for us.
Yeah,
also,
fantastic.
Galvanized souls. I don't really know who I'm talking to right now.
Maxwell Fresh.
Incredible talent. Yeah, check them out for us. Also, Galvanized mostly. I don't really know who I'm talking to right now.
Maxwell Fresh.
I'll tell you a little bit. Yeah, check them out for us. Also, Galvanized mostly. I don't really know who I'm talking to.
Maxwell Fresh.
I'll tell you a little bit. Yeah, check them out for us. Also, Galvanized mostly. I don't really know who I'm talking to.
Maxwell Fresh.
I'll tell you a little bit. Yeah, check them out for us. Also, Galvanized mostly. I don't really know who I'm talking to.
Maxwell Fresh.
It all started because Ed and I, on our first tour, got really excited because we had a bonding moment about how much we both loved Twizzler Nibs. Then, Twizzler Nibs, I mean, they're not that healthy for you. I'm just going to be honest. They say they're fat-free.
Yeah, they do, and they're right, but there's not much else redeeming about them.
No, not much. So, I saw Welch's Fruit Snacks, and I was like, clearly healthy, obviously. Fruit. So.
All you need to know, fruit.
So I made the switch, and let me tell you something. I swear I eat these damn things every day. Like,
We find packets of them laying all over the house, like
Let me tell you
expended
something.
packets of them.
as we discovered that Costco sells them in mini packs.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
The problem is, you can't just, they're really mini. You have to have two if you're me.
Do you really have to have
Well,
two?
I do.
Okay.
I do. So, I mean, really, I'll like go and be like, I'm just gonna have one pack today. Just one. I'm gonna do it. And then I get through the one pack, and I just kind of give myself a face because I'm usually alone. I walk up, and I'm very, in a very defeated state. I try to keep in mind this happens every day. Open the closet and I grab that second pack of fruit snacks, but I never go above 2. So it all began on the road, and it made its way into life, and here they are again now. This won't be the only pack of this trip.
No.
But today we are eating the berries and cherries, which is my personal favorite.
That's the way to go. She really means 2 of these packs, by the way, not 2 of them. I'm just kidding. No.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, I just wanted to take a moment to tell you how important, a very important part of my life.
You know, there was a part of that where you really could have been talking about anything. Like, it was ambiguous, like, just one pack, like, of cigarettes.
Nope. Well, just fruit snacks.
Chewing tobacco, or
6 pack.
It's just one 6-pack.
Well, just fruit snacks, man. Best thing to be addicted to on the planet.
Yeah, that's true.
It's over. Guest call-in. I'll turn that off. I will get Bruce over. So what do you before we bring Bruce in? What do you guys think? Are our candy opinions valid? Just leave a chat message if you think that's true. If you think what we're saying is okay. So our guest today, I'm going to read this awesome bio that he provided. So we're talking to Bruce Wawrzyniak today. Did I? I'll ask if I pronounced your name right. Bruce is the president of Now Hear This Incorporated, which promotes music clients as well as authors, and he has even done work for small businesses and an Olympic athlete. So if you become an Olympic athlete, you know where you need to go. Bruce is also the host of the Now Hear This Entertainment podcast, which has been released every week since February 2014. So far, that totals 336 episodes. He's written a 4-volume ebook series providing tips to up-and-coming performers, and he is also a national speaker. So I'm going to throw Bruce on the video here and do the thing there. And away we go. Hey, there he is. Let me get you up here.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce. Let me get your audio going here. Hey, Bruce.
There I am. Hello,
There you are in
friends.
the video. Let me flip you around there. Da-da-da. Rotate, flip horizontal. Hey, all right. How's it going, Bruce?
It's going great. It's going great. I'm enjoying watching the captioning at the bottom because it took Wawrzyniak, which is such a long, difficult Polish last name, and changed Wawrzyniak to Ferris. Bruce Ferris.
What?
What? Where? An our chat?
In the closed captioning at the bottom of our chat, it said Bruce Ferris. And so I think that like a good alias, like a good on-air name would be Bruce Wayne, since I'm Bruce W. And they both, my last name and Bruce Wayne both start with W-A. It's like, never mind Bruce Wayne. That's cool. Batman that's been done. Like, just change to Bruce Ferris, and that way you have a good story for it. When people say, "Wait, how did you come up with Bruce Ferris? Why is that your on-air name?"
Is that a first, by the way? Or is this just going to happen all the time?
No, this is a first.
Oh, that's so funny. Because
Only on Crimes Against Folk.
Yeah,
guys. You heard it here first.
I guess the auto captioning is trying to be Ellis Island now. I don't know what's going on here.
Crimes against last names.
So it is Wawrzyniak. We've done it. We said it right.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Of course, you said it right.
I know. I've known. Oh yeah, we've known Bruce for many years, and it's very exciting to have you here today, Bruce. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me. The two of you know tons and tons of people, so there's lots and lots of others that you could have asked other than me. So I'm honored that I'm already a guest this soon on Crimes Against Folk.
Oh yeah, we were thrilled that you wanted to join this soon. We were kind of outlining our wish list, and you were near the top of it. So like, it's just, yeah, this is really exciting. So
you.
did you have we like when we bring guests on the show, we like to have them share a story from their own experiences, and I know we primarily have musicians on here, but as a podcaster who's been doing this for 6 years, every week for 6 years now, you've got to have an incredible story or something that you find very interesting that you could share with our guests, if you don't mind.
I do have a story, and it has nothing to do with my role as a podcaster. It has everything to do with, well, one of the many artists that I've promoted over the years. And in thinking about this story for your show today, I really decided that what I'm about to share is going to appeal to 3 different segments of the audience. So for people who just like kind of the storytelling aspect and are interested in hearing about the music business, I think this will be of interest to them. But more so on the level that if you're just somebody who supports live music and goes to see performances in person, there's going to be a takeaway for you. I think it's also very inspirational for artists themselves, because you do show after show after show, and you hear the old expression that you never know who's going to be in the audience, and you say to yourself, yeah, that's true, and it may have happened to you before, but I think it gets very easy to just put it on autopilot, and some days you're not having a good day,
Yeah.
and so you just kind of go through the motions. And if you remind yourself that you never know who might be in the audience, you can say, okay, wait, I really have to deliver, because it's going to be the first and only time this person sees me.
Mm-hmm.
So the story that I'm getting at is, I had a client booked, and this was also interesting because it was rather last minute for all intents and purposes. She told me that she was going to be coming down, for those watching, I am in the Tampa, Florida area. And she was going to be traveling to Melbourne, Florida, which is over on the other coast. It's a little more than 2 hours. I think it ended up being 2.25 hours. So I drove to go to the booking, and she said, I'm coming to Melbourne, Florida. If you could just find me anywhere to perform, I would just like to do a show in the short amount of time that I'm going to be down there. And so I booked her into this, I'll call it coffee shop, but I really loved this venue because I love Starbucks, but this was not Starbucks. This was a local business that really catered to live music. They really catered to kind of that like living room feel inside. And so just to forward the story along a little bit, she's performing, and I keep very busy during that. I'm taking pictures, I'm checking the sound, I'm rolling video, kind of monitoring, what we have available for handouts in terms of promotional items or merch or whatever it is. And one man approached me and he says, "You're with the artist?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, she did Leaving on a Jet Plane, and that song really spoke to me." And he went on to tell me how he was a veteran and he remembered as she was singing it, it took him back to a point in his life where he was going off to serve our country and having to bid farewell to the woman in his life. And he was getting very teary-eyed, and he said, "Please share that with her." And so I told her later. Well, then there was someone else who approached me almost as she was finishing, and he said, "She's really talented. I want to know all about, what are you doing with her?" So I really kind of gave him the lowdown on what we were up to. And he said, "I'm just a local guy. I'm just a realtor. I've been living here for 6 or 8 years now." He said, "But in a previous life, I used to live in Los Angeles." And he said, "Your girl is really good." He said, "And I really think that she deserves every opportunity that she can get. She deserves to go on to bigger and better things." And so he said, "If there's anything I can do to help you," he said, "I might still have some acquaintances back there that maybe I can connect you to." And I said, "Well, please do, because I'm actually going out there in a couple months." I said, "And if there's anybody that I can meet with, I'd love the opportunity." And so he said, "I'll copy you on the emails. I'll put out some feelers." He dropped a few names to me, but lo and behold, one of the names that he ended up mentioning did end up responding and saying, "I went to the link that you provided. I'm really intrigued by this girl and her music. Yes, please put the manager in touch with me." And so I was able to make this connection with someone who was a huge, huge songwriter, producer out in LA who had worked with some of the biggest names that there are. And here's this guy, Bruce, down in Florida that drove 2.25 hours to be at his client's gig, making this connection with some guy who's just a realtor that happened to used to live out on the West Coast. And fast forward to my trip out to LA, and there I was, ironically, sitting in a coffee shop, having a wonderful, wonderful sit down, get to know each other for what probably turned out to be 90 minutes with this gentleman who I've ended up maintaining a wonderful relationship over the years. I want to say, for some reason, I think that might have been 7 years ago.
Oh
and
my
to this
gosh.
day, we're still in touch. And whenever I'm out in LA, we get together. So, like I say, it's a very motivational story that you just don't know what can happen, and you got to give your best performance. But like I say, for the audience, if you see someone that's really good, and you think somebody, or you yourself can help them in some way, don't hesitate to approach them, because that means the world to them, especially when it is, I'm quote unquote just playing this coffee shop in Melbourne, Florida, and all of a sudden look at what it turns into. So that, as you can tell, I've hung on to that memory as though it was last month and not as long ago as it really was.
Yeah, I could tell. I mean, that's a fantastic story.
That's an incredible story. Wow. Yeah, it's true. You never know who is sitting in the audience. And I mean, I think I've heard a lot of those stories. We attend the Far West conference, and one time there was a woman who went in. She thought she was playing for nobody, and there were maybe like 1 or 2 people sitting in the room, and she kind of just threw away her performance. And turns out there was a really big house concert host that had shown up just to hear her play, and they just weren't interested after that. So this is a perfect example of why you should go in, just give your all no matter what, because you don't know who is sitting there. And Bruce, you're one of the most supportive people I've ever met in my entire life of independent artists. I just want to urge everybody to go check out Now Hear This Entertainment. He has seriously some of the most amazing music you're going to hear ever on his show, and hear the stories behind the songs and the artists. As well, because Bruce has been so supportive of everybody else, I'm going to suggest that we all be supportive of him. He does have a Patreon account. It's just $5 a month to support Bruce. I put it in the chat link, and I'll go ahead and put it again there later, as well as our show notes, because you'll get bonus content as well and hear these amazing stories with these great artists.
Thank you, Ashley. And you don't know this, but you're actually a part of another one of those. You never know who might be their stories. So same client, we were in Nashville one time, and I had her booked to perform 4 nights in a row, and on the 4th and final night, she was done. It had been a real grueling couple of days that we'd been there, and we ran into a double booking situation at a venue in Nashville on the 4th and final night, and she said, "That's okay. Just let it go. Let the other person perform. Let's just go back. Maybe I'll get my guitar out and write a little bit." And I said, No. We didn't come to Nashville to miss out on these chances. We're going to follow through. And so I have this approach that I call my 4 P's approach, which is patient, polite, professional, but persistent. And so I stayed with it. She got to perform, and she was fighting me. Full disclosure, she was fighting me and saying, I really don't want to do this. Like, I don't know why you're pushing me. Like it's now that it's not meant to be. Someone's already booked. I don't want to start any trouble. And I told her, I really want you to think about this and do it. So she ended up deciding I'll do it. So as her show is ending, she's coming off stage, and I'm over on the other side, packing up the camera, packing up the merch, getting all of our stuff together. And I hear her saying, "Well, there's my manager over there." And she's motioning me. So as I walk over, she says, "This is my manager. This is Bruce Wawrzyniak." And so this person who had approached her is a publisher and is expressing interest and saying, "Your client's really good. I'd like to know more. Let's exchange information." And so while I was in town, this publisher said, "You ought to go see a guy named Johnny Garcia. He's a guitar player for Garth Brooks, and I'll see if I can get him to come and see her play also." And it didn't work out for him to come see her, but I went and said a quick hello to him. That was that. And fast forward to once I got the podcast going, for the people that are watching right now, Ashley was one of my first guests, and Ashley was kind enough to say, "Let me get you Johnny Garcia to be one of your guests," since I've done work with him. So Johnny, now mind you, as Ed was reading my introduction, Ed said that I'm up to 336 episodes. I still to this day know that Johnny was episode 24, because to this day, that is the most listened to episode ever of Now Hear This Entertainment.
Wow.
Episode 24 is so popular. And it's actually one of the ones, when I tell people the guests that I've had on my show, that's the 3rd one that I mentioned. I don't know how I ever put them in this order, but I tell people that my guests have included Roy Orbison Jr., the keyboard player for Aerosmith, the lead guitar player for Garth Brooks, which is Johnny Garcia, and then I go on to say the drummer for Cheap Trick, the bass player for Pink, the trumpet player for Billy Joel, and then 3 Grammy Award winners, a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, a Las Vegas headliner, 3 Emmy Award winners, and then participants from American Idol, The Voice, America's Got Talent, and The X Factor. And I don't want to get into it now, but it's amazing if you look back at some of those and say, well, how did you get these people? I mean, like I said, Ashley, you're the one that really made that interview happen for me with Johnny. And I look at some of the other ones, and one of them, the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, he's the founding guitarist from the band Heart, Ann and Nancy Wilson.
Yeah.
He started following me on Twitter, and I wrote to him and said, "Thank you for following me on Twitter. Oh, by the way, would you like to be on my podcast?" And he's like, "Sure, I'd love to." And he and I are still in touch to this day, by the way.
Oh, that's great.
That's so cool. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Huh. I had no
there's
idea.
such power in all this stuff. And I always talk a lot on my podcast about the importance of the CO word, which is collaboration, as opposed to the CO word, which is competition. Because too many people look at it the wrong way as competition, when you can collaborate with one another like the 3 of us are doing now and accomplish so much together.
I totally agree.
I think I just mentioned that in our last episode. In fact, there is no competition in music. When people say to me things like, "Oh, well, Nashville just has so much competition," and I'm like, no, there's not. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, sure, then you're gonna lose that competition. Otherwise, it's a collaboration.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I had another question, because obviously what's happening right now, the pandemic has all but, shut down the live music situation. But I was curious how it has affected the podcasting landscape, and I wanted to get your perspective on that, being a pro podcaster. What has the pandemic done for you specifically, and also on kind of a worldview, if you have that info?
Well, for me in particular, I actually have felt guilty that I don't feel that it's been any different, because I've been doing it for, as I said, almost 6.5 years. And so I'm just in such a routine, that I have just continued to book guests onto Now Hear This Entertainment the same way that I have when there wasn't a pandemic. And one difference might be that, of course, as is the case with so many other things, I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I've been doing some podcasting speaking engagements online instead of going to conferences. In fact, the last one that I went to was the first weekend in March, and that was just as the coronavirus was starting to get a little bit of momentum, so much so that I know there was 2,000 people registered and maybe 1,600 showed up.
Wow.
Because, there were people that were starting to get nervous about it. But at the same time, it's really kind of just opened everybody's eyes up to what we can all do with technology, that we can still, quote unquote, meet online, and that whether there's a pandemic or not, you can still do podcasts. And so I think what's done, Ed, globally is, I think, bigger picture, I think it's kind of awoken a lot of people who have talked about, I should start a podcast someday, to, well, I guess now is that day. I keep talking about that. I always refer to the rainy day list. We all have these, well, someday I'm going to X, someday I'm going to Y, someday I'm going to Z. It's like, well, guess what? I think that rainy day is here now, because this pandemic has got everybody quarantined. So how about now to finally start getting that podcast going? And so I think what's also happened is I've seen people who have said, well, there's just too many people podcasting now. And I say, well, number one, be forewarned that when you hear these numbers out there, that there's more than 1 million podcasts on iTunes now, there's only a fraction of them that are actually current, meaning that they're still active. So even though there's more than 1 million podcasts on iTunes, I think the number is only about, let's say, approximately a third of them. I think it's somewhere around maybe 350,000 or less that are still active, because a lot of people, there's a word called pod fading. A lot of people just, they tire of it, they start missing episodes, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I tell people is, don't get discouraged and think that there's there's too many podcasts. Number two is, I saw a statistic of the ratio of blogs to podcasts, and it's crazy. I think the number was something like 2,700 to 1. For every 2,700 blogs, there's one podcast.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, I also tell people about, the more niched down you are, the better. So if you have something that's really specific, you're going to be in a better position to succeed. But even if it's not that specific, and you say, well, other people are doing a podcast about this too, yeah, but nobody's going to present it the way you are. Nobody has the thoughts and opinions and background that you bring to it. So do it anyways.
Yeah.
Yep.
I totally
agree. I mean, it's like you wouldn't say that about music. You wouldn't go, oh, well, it's an oversaturated market, so we may as well just not do it. It's like, are you passionate about it? Then do it.
Great point. It's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny. You call it your rainy day list. I tend to call it a moonshot list.
Yeah, I've heard you say that, Ed.
And I think, and not to make it like discouraging. I think that's an inspirational thing. Like, this is a goal we know can be difficult, but we're going to get there because it's going to make things so much better. And so, we have a list of a few moonshot goals. I think one of them was going on tour in Europe, which we did. And I think another one was a podcast, which we've done. So I think, everyone should have those kind of lists. If you're wary of doing like the 5-year plan thing, having a list of goals might actually help out, because you can get to them sooner, or just you'll know that they're something you can aspire to. So,
well, and I'll tell you, the other thing is that I think people need to embrace technology and not overthink it, and not be intimidated by it, because there are so many cool things that people have done in adapting to the pandemic and everything that's been brought with it. Obviously, musicians are going live on Facebook, they're going live on Instagram, they're going live on YouTube. But when I see, there's somebody that I've met when I've gone out to Los Angeles who runs a really successful open mic out there. She has taken that open mic and still done it live within the Facebook group that's associated with that open mic. I also saw that Auburn is doing a online writers round. So if people embrace this stuff, there's some really cool things that people are doing out there. And just like you're doing, Ed, using Restream and being able to put this on different platforms so that it's accessible to people and releasing it later as an audio podcast. I think it's fun, kind of seeing that. I don't want to say what the limits are because it's almost like there are no limits. So I think it's fun to dive into some of these things and say, I might not be the expert in them yet, but I'm going to get myself out there because otherwise it is out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. Well, the fun part for us too has been the limits. Like I think we talked about this either last week or the week before, where the limits can actually make you more proactive, more creative. Like for Ashley and I, it's a physical limit. Like we're not even in the same zip code anymore, and so we had to figure out some way to keep doing this. So we just figured it out. And that's been the other great thing too.
And Bruce, you've been way ahead of that curve for years. I mean, I remember when you first started Now Hear This Entertainment. I believe I was episode number 6. Do you know if I have that right? I was way up there. It might have been. It was before 20, I think.
I believe it was 10. And I'm checking really quick here, but I have this bizarre mental Rolodex of guests, and I think it's also kind of more sentimental when you are one of the first ones. But I think you were 10. I could be. No, actually, you know what? I now I'm remembering who was 10. Strangely enough, so you could be right. I'm looking it up as we speak. I could give us a shameless plug. I'm looking it up on nhte.net.
nhte.net.
You're episode 6. There it is.
Oh, wow. How's that for the memory? That never works out in my favor. Yeah. But what's amazing to me is the fact that you're still doing it and you are in that third, and you've been at the top of, and probably still are. Maybe you can share those numbers with us about your successes with your podcast, and also can you share with us what number you're on now?
So episode 337 will come out on Wednesday, and I'm up to 153 countries around the world where I've gotten listeners from, which when I see that, both of those numbers are really significant to me, because the 337 is, I take more pride in the fact that I've never missed an episode, more so than what the number is, because when you can tell someone that it's been delivered on time every week, as a listener, you're saying, okay, he's carrying out his end of the verbal contract. Like, he's telling us every Wednesday there's going to be a new episode. So when they look every Wednesday and it's there, and they say he's never let me down, he's never missed a week, I'm more proud of that than, oh, it's 337, because I meet podcasters that are up to 737, and I feel like a newbie. But the 153 countries, when I see what some of them are, and I think, oh my gosh, there's somebody in Saudi Arabia who listened to my podcast, that they took time out of their day to listen to this, in air quotes, this Bruce guy in Florida. That means a lot to me. And granted, it might have just been that they're a fan of the guest that I had on and they just wanted to listen for that reason, but it still means a lot to me that they invested their time. And of course, my hope is that they'll listen to other episodes and say, well, I first came to it for this particular guest, but I really enjoy this guy's show, so I'm going to tap the subscribe button and check out some of his past episodes and things of that nature.
Yeah, came for this guest, stayed for the rest. Like, that's hopefully that's the goal, when you have, I think one of the goals when you have guests on, other than just wanting to really have a conversation and have some wonderful insight. How's your style for the podcast evolved over the years? I'm really curious about that. Like, are you still kind of doing it the same way you've been doing it, or did you change it a lot?
I think my changes have been very minor. I think the biggest change was that when I first started doing it, I didn't know. I was one of those people that thought, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming technology. How am I going to actually record this thing? And I used to go to a recording studio for it. And granted, I did catch a big break by partnering up with Tascam, and being able to do it all on my own was a game changer, in the sense that I was just having this conversation with someone the other day that if you're at a studio, and obviously this goes for musicians too, as it relates to recording yourself at home versus paying for studio time.
Mm-hmm.
The discussion was, if the studio tells you, okay, you have a standing time block every Thursday at 3 p.m., well, guess what? The guest better be available Thursday at 3 p.m. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on that interview, and you could miss out on somebody really good. So
Yeah.
to me, that was another one of the benefits of doing it on my own, is if someone said, well, I can do it Saturday at 3 p.m., but I can't do it Thursday. I have a regular Monday through Friday 9 to 5. Well, great. Now I don't have to miss out on that.
Yeah.
But in terms of my style, I think I've just kind of tweaked some things over the years. The guy whose recording studio I used to go to, he used to say, what you're doing is a radio show. It's so polished, it really sounds like a radio show. But you also have to remember that I'm also doing it from the standpoint of someone who has been doing artist promotion for so many years, that I know what I would like my clients to be able to get out in an interview. That's why mine is long form, because in a 5 to 7 minute interview, you're getting asked the same old questions on the radio stations, and you're not really getting to roll up your sleeves and let the audience get to know you. And so I also had to learn that this guy at the studio would tell me, it's the biggest compliment that you get each week. I sit here and hear the guests saying, and I said, what? And he said, you'll ask questions, and right away I hear them saying, wow, that's a really good question. He said, and I think they appreciate the level of research that you do and that you're not asking the same questions. So I've tried to stay true to that. At the same time, I've tried to stay true to making sure that I don't slip into a comfort zone where it does sound like a radio show and it's not. I really put an emphasis on educating listeners who are musicians themselves that are trying to learn from the guests. So I don't want to get away from that. So the tweaks that I've made have just been little tricks that I've picked up from other podcasters, or they're basically me trying to get out of my own way and remember that the show's not about me. It's about the guest and it's about the audience. And I'm just kind of there, as the traffic director to make sure that's happening and not listen to my own voice for longer than I need to.
That's great. I love that philosophy there, the traffic director. That's that totally makes sense. I honestly feel that way with all of these buttons and pieces of software that I'm trying to
and there's a lot that Ed is working with over there.
but I like that philosophy.
Yep. Ed, you're our traffic director.
This was we're almost out of time here, but we did have one more question.
Oh yeah.
For you, and this was Ashley's suggestion, and I love it.
It's an important one. Lots of research behind this one, and
if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Well, I'm probably supposed to put on that Batman persona that I alluded to at the very beginning, the Bruce W. persona.
Bruce W.
But I think as a young boy, you think about that question a lot over your lifetime, and not just as a young boy. You start off as a young boy thinking about it. And the one that always stuck with me was being invisible. I just think that's a great one, because you could observe so much more and people would still act the same way because they wouldn't know that you're there. I think if you said, I want, say, X-ray vision or super hearing, well, they're still going to see you in front of them, so it might influence their behavior. But I think being invisible, it's not going to help in terms of, say, time travel or speed or anything like that. But just to be able to kind of be that fly on the wall that we always talk about, that cliche that we always use, fly on the wall, I think that would be really fun.
Yeah, especially some of those fun recording sessions that we think about, like to be invisible at like Abbey Road. Man, that would have been crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and how perfect for a podcast host. That is the perfect answer for you. So, Bruce, can you run through the audience and where we can listen to your show, and if you have anything upcoming, or I know I mentioned Patreon, perhaps you can mention that again, and anything else you want to share with us?
Sure. So I always just tell people to start at nhte.net. It's obviously the acronym for the show name, Now Hear This Entertainment. And you can listen there, but also when you land on nhte.net, there are icons there so that you can instead click on to go hear it on Apple Podcasts, which is iTunes. You can hear it on Spotify, on SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, or Google Play Music. But then I always add in that if out of those 7 you say, oh, he didn't mention so-and-so, chances are really good that if you just search for Now Hear This Entertainment on whatever podcast platform you typically listen to podcasts through, you'll probably find it on there. I just stress that you have to make sure you put in all 4 words, because really quick the story was, when I first started the podcast, I thought, well, my business is called Now Hear This, so I'll just probably call it the Now Hear This Podcast. And everybody's like, oh, wow, that's a good idea. And I'm like, no, it's just common sense. I went on iTunes and I typed in Now Hear This. And I saw somebody's already using it. And I thought, well, I'm going to pretty much be interviewing people who are having success in entertainment, primarily music. So let me try Now Hear This Entertainment. Okay, that's available. That's the name of the show. No real sexy story there. So when you're searching on whatever platform you listen to podcasts through, make sure you put in all 4 words, Now Hear This Entertainment. And then similarly, thank you, Ashley. Yes, the Patreon is either patreon.com/NHTE, or when you do go to that nhte.net, there's an orange colored support us on Patreon button there. And what I'm doing there, it's only $5 a month, but every week when I record the podcast interview, when I hit stop, I say, okay, stay on the line, because now we're going to record some bonus content for Patreon. And I'll be darned if this thing isn't turning into almost half of another episode, because the guests are being really generous with the conversation. And it's funny because, Ed, you were asking me about changing my style, or, any tweaks that I made. And I'm challenging myself more in that Patreon than the guest, because I don't want to sound like this uptight formal interviewer during the main podcast. But during the Patreon, I really challenge myself to just be conversational and just, okay, now we're just 2 people talking and the microphone still happens to be turned on.
Yeah.
Yet I find some guests that are so fascinating, that have so much going on, that I can't cover everything in the main podcast. And so we continued over on Patreon. And just this morning, I was posting across all my socials about the latest Patreon file that I put up. I interviewed these 2 ladies from New Zealand, and we went through the whole podcast interview. Towards the end, they started talking about something really exciting that's developing, and they said, but we can't really disclose it right now. And I said, okay, and we moved on. Well, then when we started talking about, whatever we wanted to chit-chat about on Patreon, all of a sudden they said, well, we couldn't say this in the main podcast, but we'll tell you here. And all of a sudden they make this huge announcement about this amazing opportunity that they're signing contracts for as we speak. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I hope people will go and sign up for Patreon now, because that's huge. And that, I actually felt honored that they would choose me, and in this case specifically my Patreon, to share this with people. So there's some pretty cool stuff, being talked about over there that, really, to me, that the $5 does help, but it also just kind of tells me that people feel like, hey, I like what you're doing. I recognize the time you're putting into it. And I want to hear these extra conversations.
That's wonderful.
That is very cool.
And by the way, there's links for all my socials on nhte.net also.
Okay.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff.
Okay, excellent.
So be sure to visit nhte.net, and you will find whatever you would like to find about Bruce Wawrzyniak and Now Hear This Entertainment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bruce. This has been a very illuminating conversation. We're really happy you're able to join us.
My pleasure.
I'm thankful for you, and it's so cool to have you at the beginning of our podcast, since I was the beginning of yours, and hopefully we'll see you again on episode number 337 or whatever. Hopefully way sooner than that, in fact.
Wonderful. Thank you both. I really do appreciate it. And congratulations on launching the podcast. A lot of people say they're going to do it, and they say they're going to do it, and 6 months later they say they're going to do it, and the 2 of you did it. So congrats.
Thank you.
Thanks. That means a lot.
It really does.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, Bruce. We'll see you soon.
Alrighty.
Take care.
Got it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. That's Bruce Wawrzyniak. We've put links in the chat. We'll put them in the show notes. Please do check out his podcast. It's wonderful. We did it live once at NAMM, didn't we?
Oh yeah.
That was I was with you that time.
Right. Yeah, we were. Oh man, that must be a very loud episode.
Yeah.
Have you
NAMM
guys
is
ever
always
been
loud.
to NAMM? Yeah, NAMM. It happens every year in LA at around January, and it stands for National Association Musician Merchants. Yes. And I just mumbled through that, but something in there was right. But it's a crazy conference. You can only really go if you happen to be working with a company. It's for gear mostly, but a lot of musicians like to go because it's a great way to connect with other musicians. And we're walking around and we're seeing Stevie Wonder and Marcus Miller walking past us. It's the coolest event, and we got to meet up with Bruce there, and it is the loudest conference you could ever possibly imagine because, as I mentioned, it's for gear. So that means there are people there with microphones and amplifiers, and they're all demoing their stuff at the same time. And we went because we had an endorsement with Sunburst Gear. They asked us to come do a couple of live performances, which we did. And I mean, it's funny. And we also did it for Avian Guitars, which we landed an endorsement at NAMM as well. We're going to do an episode on endorsements, by the way, just log that. But we are, it's pretty crazy because you can't, even though there's all this other noise going, as long as you get kind of close enough around the booth, you can kind of hear what's going on with the different artists around. But yeah, Wither Words on an episode of Now Hear This Entertainment from NAMM.
Yeah, I remember that now. That was really fun.
Yeah, but Bruce has, I mean, he's a big deal, you guys.
Yeah.
He's
a
been,
big deal.
Yeah, I think he was number one for a while on Apple Podcasts. In fact, I think he was the number one. He hit like a number one something on there, and
Gosh.
Yeah, and he also he's invited to be the keynote speaker at a lot of podcast conventions, which is a really big deal. And as well as, is it Tascam, Ed?
Yeah, he's endorsed by Tascam. They were developing, if I remember correctly, they were developing kind of a unit that you could, kind of easily produce podcasts. And of course, Bruce being a prolific podcaster, he managed to get that endorsement. And Tascam's a big company. They've been around for a while. When I heard that, I was like, whoa, Tascam. Wow, that's great. So, he's made it work, and that's the best thing. And again, he's super consistent, and he's really nice and always very helpful. So if you're thinking of starting a podcast yourself, definitely check out Bruce's podcast for a really good kind of example of how to run a good podcast. Absolutely.
Yep. And please do support his Patreon page if you can.
Yep.
I was actually talking to him about it yesterday, and I was like, it's so funny because the musicians, we all get the sponsorship, and I'm sorry, we don't get all the sponsorship, but we do. That's who you think about when you're like, oh, I'm going to support the arts, I'm going to support the musicians. But there are also people like Bruce who are, fueling the fire under the musicians and helping them keep going. So really, they need your sponsorship too. And Bruce is a really, really incredible person to sponsor on Patreon. So.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. Patreon.com/NHTE or NHTE.net.
All right. It's request time, eh?
Let's do some requests. We have a very special request, in fact. First and foremost.
Oh, yeah. Hang on. I gotta get my guitar.
This is a side request. We won't include it in the two. So we're in the part of our show where we ask you guys to throw out some song requests. And if we know it, or sometimes if we don't, we'll try. Sometimes. But if we know it, we'll do it. And we have time for two. So throw out your requests and we will try to do two. If you have requested one last week and we said we would do it this week, we have already forgotten what that was. So please request it again so we may try and not forget next time. I do have a pen and a piece of paper with a million things written on it, so I'll circle it.
Isadora. I think we did Isadora. We did Isadora last week, I believe.
We did. We could do it again.
Yeah. But let's do this one first.
This is a surprise, I guess.
Yeah.
For a very dear friend of ours over in England. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday Happy birthday, Eric.
Happy birthday, Eric.
Thanks for tuning in every week.
You survived another year.
All right, so we have 2 requests in, so I'm going to close the request off now. One is, they're both originals. I think we should definitely do Isadora again because Isadora missed Isadora last week because they were traveling.
Oh, right.
But so we could do that again. And then the other request is a song of ours called Nephew from Itso. If you guys have other requests, Rob Chadwell says Freebird. And I'll tell you something, Rob Chadwell, that ain't free. $100 bird.
Oh, you should know better, Rob.
Rob Chadwell is going to be a guest of ours in a future episode, by the way.
Interesting.
What are we doing first?
Isadora.
Okay.
Do you need the words for that?
I do, and I've got them right here.
Oh, well, look at that. I still have to sign that.
Yeah, I know. I have this book. I have this book it's got all the Witherword lyrics in it because we can't remember the lyrics to all of our songs. And it's so convenient because I just have to pull it out when I don't remember how a song goes. Ta-da!
How did you sign that one and I didn't?
I don't know. Why do I think it's Brad's.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
think
maybe.
I gave it to him and I signed it and you weren't around. And I was like, oh yeah, we got to get Ed to sign that. And that just never happened. So it's kind of sad that I have my own book. And signed it
It's got your
myself. Lame. Little loser. This is called Isadora. This is for Isadora and Coco, my nieces. I love you guys. Hello, Isadora. How are you today? Do you have a minute? I've got something to say. I think you're really special. Indulge me if you can to read this little letter to help you understand. If my heart were in my mind, I think before you break it, I could lay it on the line, or you could just take it. I've got this pen and paper. It seems I've lost my voice. Thoughts of youthful spaces where once there was a void. Your eyes are like the ocean. Your hair a subtle breeze. Your soul shines like a lighthouse when I'm lost at sea. If my heart were in my mind, I think before you break it, I could lay it on the line, or you could just take it. 1,000 years I'd wait for you if you would just tell me to. I have waited long before. I adore Isadora. If my heart were in my mind, I think before you break it, I could lay it on the line, or you could just take it. Sincerely, Isadora, If you've made it to the end, I'd love to be your auntie, but I'd like to be your friend. Love you guys.
I don't mind that on the electric. It's not bad.
Yeah. I like that you're playing the electric today. I never really know, because again, I can't see Ed. I can only hear Ed. So I don't really know what he's going to play.
Yeah.
Bass, electric, or acoustic. And it's always a fun surprise for me when he starts out the song. So on our original recording of that, Ed sings it.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had a lot of requests for it lately. And I'm singing it now. Okay.
A little Nashville for you.
Nice. All right, hold on. I gotta actually turn my guitar on. If that helps. I think it's the first time I played guitar today.
There it is.
Hello. So this is off the same album, actually, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's off of the
Yes, it is.
Anchor album. This is a very confusing song that nobody really knows what it's about. I've tried to explain it, and then I explain it again later, and it has a completely different meaning. So I don't really know either. It was inspired by a night out with friends. We'll put it that way. The middle seat riding home wasted. Seconds to just rest my head. Turn 2 minutes of faded. Cigarette breath on my neck. But you are a part of his family. He's the captain of this wanted car. There's construction on 41 highway. Good thing we're not going too far. It won't kill anyone if I bruise you. So hold still, 'cause this one might hurt. You are somebody's nephew, and I am nobody's girl. Do you think he saw me in the mirror? Or even cared to look behind? I saw him first, but I'm guessing who I'll go home with tonight. How do you love just one person? Maybe I love a little too much. He said he wants a lover, but baby, I don't think he knows how to love. It won't kill anyone if I bruise you. So hold still, 'cause this one might hurt. You are somebody's nephew, and I am nobody's girl. Ooh, it won't kill anyone if I bruise you. So hold still, 'cause this one might hurt. You are somebody's nephew, and I am nobody's. Kill anyone if I bruise you. Hold on to the ship as we turn. You are somebody's nephew. And I am nobody's girl. Nice. I hate playing that song with drummers because I always feel really bad at the end.
Oh, because of the weird stop at the end?
Yeah, we end on is it a 3 on the 3?
Yeah.
One, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
It's on the beat 3, yeah.
Instead of ending on like a 4 or a 1.
Or, yeah.
We end on the 3, and I try to cue it every time, and we've never had a drummer nail it, and I would never expect to because it's not like we've run it through with them the first time. I always like, oh yeah, this is gonna end really weird. I kind of signal to them, and then we end it, and they just look at me like, I was like, it's not you. It's not you. It's a problem.
It's not the end of the It's not you.
We decided to end that song really
This is
weird.
our fault. We take full responsibility for this.
Apologize. Oh boy. Okay. It's time for tips and tricks.
All right. So today we will start at the end. We're going to make this, like a lot of these, I think we'll make this, this particular topic a part of a multi-parts because there's so much that you can talk about. Like there's a lot to this process, but we're going to start talking about producing your own music. And when I say we're going to start at the end, we're going to start with the publishing and the distribution. Okay, it's just a few things that we've done, that we do to get the music out to you, the audience. And, if any musicians are listening or anybody and they're wondering how we've done it or how it's done, it's great because it's not as difficult as it used to be. It used to be, a lot of the distribution channels were locked up with record labels. So record labels would have an easier time getting your records or your CDs or your cassette tapes out to Sam Goody or, wherever you would go to get Tower Records or wherever you'd go to buy your music. That's landscape has changed, and it really changed when the iPod came out and subsequently when iTunes came out. And that changed the entire landscape of how artists could get their music out to people. We started moving towards a digital distribution model that was mainly spurred by the prevalence of Napster and a lot of the file sharing apps from the late 90s, early 2000s. So where we're at now is that music is more widely available and a lot easier to get to your audience. And that's the kind of the wonderful thing about music now is that there's so many avenues you can use. So at this point in the process, you have recorded your album, you've mixed it, you have mastered it, and now it's ready to go. You've got the artwork done. Now it's ready to go. So how do you get it out to things like Spotify and Apple Music and all that stuff? Well, the great news is getting it out digitally is really easy. There are two services that I am aware of. I know there are more. The one we've always used is CD Baby. And CD Baby has been around for a really long time. They've been around, I want to say, since the 90s. And they were one of the first independent music distributors. They were essentially a music distributor for artists that artists can work directly with. You wouldn't need to go to every store and figure it out. You just send your stuff to CD Baby, and people can buy it on CD Baby, and they would ship it to the purchaser. So as the digital revolution came along, CD Baby started their own MP3 store, and that service kind of grew into distributing to online stores like Apple's iTunes, and eventually Google Play, and eventually all the streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music and the like. So CD Baby, and there's another large competing one called TuneCore. And those two services are the main way you can get your music out to pretty much every streaming service and digital distribution service on the planet, worldwide. So with CD Baby, and I'm going to use CD Baby as an example because that's what we use. With CD Baby, all you really need to do is have high quality WAV files, WAV files of your music, because they will handle the conversion to MP3 and AAC and all the different formats that you need. They handle the conversion, so you don't need to convert your music already. They will also handle things like metadata entry and ISRC codes, UPC codes. They handle all of that, so you don't have to worry about it. If your music doesn't already have ISRC codes, which is an identifier, a unique identifier for each song that identifies it digitally, they generate them for you. So that part's really easy. You just need the information on, who wrote the songs, who performed the songs, all the album, the front cover artwork, and any other information you might want to include. And that will let you start the process. As I understand it now, I believe if you want to submit a single, it's $29, and they'll distribute it everywhere. If you want to do a whole album, it's $59. And so you see, it's really easy. It's not that expensive to get your music out there. And so once you have all the information, you can start the process of getting your music uploaded to CD Baby and getting all the relevant information entered, all the photos uploaded, make sure they're the right color and make sure they're the right size, because that's what it's going to look like everywhere. So you want to make sure you get it right, as changes can be difficult to do once you submit it. So once you've got all that set up on CD Baby, then when you pay the fee, you can hit submit, and they will double check it because they want to make sure that everything is up to the standards of their distribution partners. So, like, for example, if you say it's explicit, they want to make sure that all of that is that it's actually true. Or if you say it's not explicit, they want to make sure that it's labeled correctly, or that sort of thing. And so once you've got all that and it's ready to go, you can hit submit, and once it's been accepted, it usually shows up on the big services sometimes within a day. So it'll be up on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, a lot of the big services within a day. Some of the smaller ones, it might take a couple more days to get to them. But usually it's about a day. And one of the nice things about CD Baby and TuneCore is they do offer extra services if you need to do things like royalty collection. So when we talk about royalty collection, you can collect royalties for your songs having been played on radio stations around the world. Typically, you have to do that yourself, as if you are the publishing rights owner or the songwriter of a song, you can collect royalties for either of those percentages. But the rub is you have to do it yourself. So you'd have to contact the royalty agencies or get the cue sheets from all the different radio stations or all the different whoever's, and then get the royalty money from them. But CD Baby can offer to do it on your behalf. So if you go CD Baby Pro, they will become what's known as a publishing admin, and they will, on your behalf, seek out radio performance royalties and other performance royalties for the songs that you submit to CD Baby. It's a little more expensive. It's $99 for a whole album as opposed to $59. But if you anticipate that you're going to get a lot of play on, radios or jukeboxes or even YouTube, that sort of thing, you can pay for that, and they will become an admin. One thing to note when you do that with YouTube, that's a little confusing. They will upload your songs as YouTube videos so that they can be found on YouTube Music. And so if you do what we do and you play your own songs on your own live streams and YouTube hears them, you'll probably get sent emails saying, "Hey, did you know you just played a song that's owned by CD Baby?" Don't worry about it. They're collecting the money for your own song that you just played on your behalf. So it took a while for that to register for me, but it's not a copyright strike. You're not in trouble. They just are sending you a notice saying, "Hey, we noticed that this music is owned by so-and-so," which in this case is CD Baby, which in this case is you. CD Baby didn't steal your music. They're just acting as a publishing admin on your behalf. So that can get a little weird, but it's a wonderful service if you need it. So then once it's up there, you can share it. You can do all kinds of, you can share and build the communities on Spotify and Apple Music that you need to. And it's really easy. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And the royalties will get paid to your CD Baby account. And then they get paid out there's like a payout threshold that you set. And then the royalties will get paid out to you, to whatever bank account, once the payout hits that threshold. Other alternatives, if you don't want to use something like CD Baby or TuneCore, or if you want to use something in addition to those, there are a couple of other alternatives. One is called Bandcamp, and you've heard us talk about Bandcamp a lot on our Witherword page. Bandcamp is great because, for one, they have their own kind of community, their own kind of music social network built into Bandcamp, so people can search for music and find music they want to listen to. The second is they don't require any money up front. They typically will take 15% of the sales that you make, but they do it in a unique way. Let's say your album costs $15, just as an example. So what they'll do is when you sell units 1 through 14, you keep all of the money. And then the 15th unit, they keep all the money. And then it resets. So that way you get all the money from the first 14 sales. You'll get it all. And then they just take the next sale. However, whatever the percentage is that your album works out to be based on what price you set. And another neat thing about Bandcamp is that you can set your own price. You can set it to be $0, or you can set it to be pay what you want, or you can do collections and sell those. You can also sell merchandise through Bandcamp as well. You still have to ship it, but they will handle kind of the payment processing, logistics, and everything. Bandcamp is great because, again, it's totally independent, and especially since the pandemic has hit, they've done a lot of these kind of, let's say, sales for musicians where they waive their revenue share. So when on a certain day when you buy an album of an artist on Bandcamp, then the artist receives all of that money, no matter how many albums they sell. They get all that money. They've done fundraisers for certain charitable organizations and stuff like that with their revenue share. So they try to encourage people to buy as much as they can. So it's a really great way to find new music, and it's a fantastic way to sell your own music. You can upload high quality files, and they will give you any format you want, which is great if you're an audiophile. You can get lossless files on there really easily. That's mainly why I like it, because I am kind of an audiophile. So I can get uncompressed versions of songs and listen to them in full fidelity, which is fantastic. One other thing that they will do is they will also let you do pre-sales. So you can do a pre-order campaign. You can do this with CD Baby and TuneCore as well, but they'll also let you do a pre-order campaign. And you can do, album codes, all kinds of stuff. It's definitely worth checking out if you want to sell your own music. without going through some of the bigger services. Or if you maybe have cultivated a good fan base on Bandcamp, it could be a good place for you to stay. One other thing I want to talk about when you're doing your own music is selling covers. So if your album, or if your album contains a cover or two, or if your single is a cover, we've done this once before, you need to be able to pay songwriting royalties back to the person who actually wrote the song. You would get any kind of recording royalties for that, because there are two parts to this process. There's the song that the songwriter writes, and then there's the recording that you did. So you would get the recording stuff, but the songwriter gets their songwriter stuff. So you have to be able to do that and make sure that the songwriter gets what's owed to them. The standard rate for what we would call a mechanical royalty is 9.1 cents per copy sold for a 5-minute song. It increases fractionally every minute over 5 minutes. And that's set by the government. So what you need to do then is make sure you know where the money goes and send them the money when you sell that stuff. Well, that's really difficult. I'm not going to lie. That's a really difficult thing to do. So CD Baby doesn't do this anymore, but they've partnered with a website that does this called easysonglicensing.com. So what this company will do is you submit, okay, how many copies of this do you think you're going to sell? And you can prepay those mechanical royalties for physical and digital single copies of albums or songs. And what I mean by that is if you're going to actually sell a CD or a vinyl record, or if you are going to sell individual songs or albums or the individual covers on iTunes as a downloadable file, okay? That's where the mechanical royalty rate applies. So these services make it really easy for you to get that squared away so you don't have to worry about it and you don't get in trouble. Streaming royalties are a mess. And so having a company that can handle this for you is even better, because then they can make sure the money gets where it goes, but the money it depends so much. You think sometimes it just depends on which way the wind is blowing as to how much money you actually get. But part of that money still has to go to somebody. So having companies like Easy Song Licensing help. TuneCore has their own cover licensing program. So that way you can prepay for song licenses for any covers that you intend on selling, on any cover versions you intend on selling. When you're distributing cover songs, things like YouTube has their own song licensing agreements worked out with a lot of the major publishers, so they handle it on the back end. If you try and monetize it, like run ads on the video, they split that revenue, or they will send the ad revenue to that particular person. So YouTube, you don't really need to worry about it because the agreements are there. So it is a little bit extra work if you're trying to do a cover, whether it's a cover album or a cover song. But when you are distributing through things like CD Baby or TuneCore, they make it a lot easier for you to get that going. So once you have all of that on there, it's all set. Your album's done, it's ready to go, and it's out there for people to listen. And it's out there, everywhere. So any streaming service you can think of, that's pretty much where it's going to go. And they give you options. If you don't want it to go everywhere, you can pick and choose exactly where you want it to go. And it's not as mystifying as it used to be. So that's one of the wonderful things about the time that we live in now, is that if you have an album, or if you want to put together an album, or if you want to just do a single, if you think you have a really good single that you can get some traction on, look into things like CD Baby and TuneCore and just get it out there. It's only, $30 for a single, $60 for an album. That's not bad. considering, what you would have had to do 25 years ago. So that's the end of this. That's the end of this tips and tricks, and that is the end of the publishing process, the getting the album out there process. We'll work backwards from there, and we'll talk about things like mastering and mixing and even tracking stuff, that sort of thing, as time goes on. But we wanted to start at the end because it's kind of interesting. It's one of the parts that I think people don't realize, that it's fairly easy to get your music out to people nowadays, even on the big digital stores. So,
yeah, I hear a lot of musicians say things like, "Oh, it's a dream of mine to just see one of my songs up on Spotify," and I'm like, it's easier than you think. I'm also using, because I've been doing a lot of side solo projects lately in randomly the pop and EDM markets, which came as a complete surprise. But I've distributed a couple of songs now, and I put them out through using SoundCloud. Funny enough.
oh yeah, that's another good one.
Yep, SoundCloud and Repost. They have a monetization thing, and you can pitch to be in some playlists and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting. I think I just paid like $35 for a year, and I can release as many songs as I want to it goes to all the streaming sites in a year.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I did a pop song with a guitar player in Italy, and he was like really surprised. He's like, "What? We're on Spotify?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's easier than literally just $30 and a click of a button. That's it, guys." I hate to like take, again, we're dropping the curtains here, but really it's so easy. Simple. Yep. And so if you've had a dream to see yourself on Spotify, you can make that dream come true. And how cool is that for you? So
it still has not gotten, I know we've released, we've done 6 projects over our last few years, and even when I see it pop up there, it's still really exciting. I'm still like, oh wow, there it is.
Yeah, me too. It feels especially cool when I incorporate it into one of my Instagram stories, because the Instagram is partnered with Spotify in particular, so you can add music to your stories, but it has to be on Spotify. So every time I search for one of our songs or one of my songs, and I pop it in there, and you hear it in the story, and you share it, and sometimes people get really surprised. They're like, "Whoa, that's you? You're on Spotify?" I'm like, yeah, I'm on Spotify. It's a big deal. But it is, because why? We put a lot of work into it. If you're on Spotify, you've put a lot of work into it, and you should be proud.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think on anything, I still get excited even when I see it up on Bandcamp. Like, it's just,
me too.
When you finally get it done and it's up there, that's still a pretty exciting time.
It was really cool to see a lot of, we have our live chat going on, and there was a whole discussion about Bandcamp happening in our live chat, and that was pretty exciting to see that you guys are such big fans of Bandcamp. I mean, really, it's the most supportive one of the artists. I
agree. I agree. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So that said,
we have some questions, yeah?
Yeah, we're going to move on to our Q&A. And before we do, I just want to make a mention. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, but as we are now in week 3, we are hoping to watch our podcast grow, and you can help. How can you help? Please follow or subscribe anywhere you're listening to the actual podcast. I know a lot of you are listening live right now, but if you are listening on Spotify or Apple or Podbean or Stitcher, you can follow or subscribe to any of those. And if you really love us a lot, you can leave a review, especially on Apple Music. That really helps boost you. So if you guys have some time to do that, we sure would appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Questiones.
What questions do we have? Also, I just want to say, and I should probably put a call to action out for this more often, but you can leave your questions before. I know they arise as the show happens, especially as we're talking through the tips and tricks and the guest segments. But feel free to ask us anything at any time. You can send us an email. You can send us a comment on Facebook or YouTube or Messenger or whatever, and we'll be sure to answer them live in the show.
Yep. One thing I wanted to get to, I know that Christamir mentioned, and I just looked it up. Honestly, I hadn't heard about it, so thank you for letting us know. But Itzo said CD Baby closed their MP3 store.
Oh,
So I guess I'm imagining they're trying to retool for distribution. I don't know. Maybe they're having some trouble because again they retired their cover licensing as well. So, yeah, that's a little sad because again it was one of the first ones that would let indies sell their own music, physical and digital. So,
yeah, and just also a reminder that we will have all of this in our show notes on crimesagainstfolk.com. So be sure to go in there and check out the show notes. If you had any questions or wanted a review of the millions of things that we talked about, it should mostly be in there.
yep.
As well as where we're streaming from should be in there as well, Ed? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Let's see. What do you have one there?
I just see a question here. Is it easier to produce an album yourself or to have someone produce it for you? And when do you need to hire someone to help with production? Well,
I don't know. I mean, you've done both. I guess I've kind of done both too. Not as much as you have, though.
yeah, I think I like producing albums myself with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like being involved in the production. I don't like doing it all by myself because I am a firm believer that you're only as good as the people that you're working with. And that can be one other person, like case in point,
Mm-hmm.
Edward and I, we seem to be a great team. But sometimes that's multiple people and it just depends on the scenario and it depends on the person. But I've made albums where I'm either like the hired singer or I'm or they're just doing the production and they're going, no, trust me, you just do this. And you're kind of going, well, I mean, I know I hired you to be my producer, but it is my music. And that actually, I have heard a lot of horror stories of artists who are working with a producer, and especially when they're paying a producer, and they can. Again, I've heard a lot of horror stories. There's some fantastic stories too, but that's a gamble you take, especially if you haven't worked with the producer before. You don't really know for sure how you two are going to work together, and you just spent all this time and money in the studio without necessarily knowing if you haven't worked with them before. And it can get kind of weird. Like, well, I didn't really want it to be this way. Yeah, but you hired me as the producer. Right, but it's my money and I'm in my song, so shouldn't it be the way that I want it to be? And a lot of producers will say, well, then you should have hired a different producer. And I totally see that point. I won't lie. Like it would be like somebody hiring me and going, well, but I really wanted you to sound more grovelly in that background vocal, And I'd be like, well, then why'd you hire me? Because I have a very clear voice,
Yeah.
So I do kind of understand that point, but which is why I like to be involved in the production. I know we just discovered recently that Ariana Grande had just produced co-produced her last album, and she apparently was really involved in it, and she did a whole tutorial on YouTube where she's discussing what she did in Pro Tools to make this sound like this and that sound like that. And I think that was pretty cool that she got to have that hands-on experience in that. And I think there's probably going to be a little bit more of a reward at the end, or you're going to feel, I think you're going to feel more proud of your work at the end when doing that, you know? I mean, even on the stuff that I'm doing on BandLab, like I claim that there's other producers, and that's true because they produce the track, but I produce my own vocals on it. So not having somebody, just being able to have the freedom to just create without somebody, you know, breathing down your neck or saying, no, it should be like this or it should be like that there's something rewarding about that too. All of that said, sometimes you're too close to the music to make it happen on your own. In fact, Ed and I have talked multiple times about maybe just hiring a producer because it can be difficult. It's like writing your own bio, you know?
Yep.
It's so much easier to have somebody else do that for you, because they might have a different vision than you have. They might have a different spin or just something really cool that you didn't think about to add to your production. So, yeah, long story short, for me, I'd rather be involved in the production if I'm not going to be a co-producer of songs. But I think ultimately it just depends on the person. I know people who just they don't want to touch it. You do it. I write the song, I sing, you produce, and that's totally respectable. I know some people who want to do everything, which is also respectable. It just depends.
Yeah, I think I'm more in that latter camp. I think I'm more of a I would rather have control over everything, and so it's so, you know, in that sense, having someone come in and do it would be good too, because, yeah, like Ash said, you can get too close to it, and you can, you know, you start beating your head against the wall and it doesn't sound exactly how you hear it in your head, you know. So, but I think that's just a product of how I've done things over the years. I've usually been the only one doing stuff, so I prefer that. But yeah, that's just how I've done it. I've only worked with other people like outside of Witherwood maybe once or twice on making a thing. You know, back in Hazard, we would have basically the engineer would be the producer at that point because we couldn't afford an extra producer. So,
yeah, which is often what happens for our music anyway.
Yeah, like we just can't afford it.
Like, yeah, well, we like to pretend all day long that we chose to not have someone produce it, but often we just can't really afford it.
Yeah,
which it's kind of cool too, because it forces us to be more creative and really think outside of the box, in my opinion. So I don't regret a single album we've made. I'm really proud of all of them.
Here's another question from Alice. What are the benefits of digital only release versus digital and physical release? Price. I mean, it costs a decent amount of money to make whatever it is. Vinyl is terribly expensive for an indie musician. And CDs are still, I mean, depending on how many you want and what packaging you want, they can get expensive as well. I mean, the Anchor CDs were fairly expensive to make because we had like 6 panels and we were making a bunch of them. So digital is just cheaper, and you can get it out to more places nearly instantly. It's not like you would have to send it out to a store or wait for CD Baby to send it out to a store. It's up on the services, again, usually within a day, and available for everybody immediately. So those are probably the 2 biggest benefits. So.
Yep. All right. Well, if you do have any other questions about this episode or another one that you have listened to, please feel free to email us and we will address it in the next episode. Because we can do that too. We don't have to answer questions about the topic at hand.
True.
We can answer questions about whatever you guys want.
Letters to the editor.
Yeah. Do we have an email address?
Yes, I will put it in the thing here.
Cool.
Here we go.
So we are going to give you guys one more song and we're going to say goodbye.
Yep.
And don't forget to check Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher, and Podbean on Tuesday, because this will be edited down and released as a final podcast format. I want to say thank you to everybody for watching live, who was able to watch live. That's really part of the fun of the show for us, is we get to give you the option. You can either watch live or you can listen to the final edit at the end. We're just happy to have you listening either way.
Yep. We want to have extra special thanks to Bruce Wawrzyniak. Go to nhte.net to find out more about him and his podcast and whatever services he can offer you. If you're a musician, definitely check him out, because he can help you with more than just cool podcasts and cool stories.
Yep. If you have a story you want to share and it's about music, please feel free to email us as well and pitch your story to us. You might get an email back from us asking to be in the podcast. So
Yeah.
you never know. We're pretty excited about some of the guests we've got coming up. We have Rick and Laura Hall coming up, the singer and the songwriter.
Yep.
Randy Driscoll. I asked Lisa Sanders today. She's agreed, her and Brown Sugar. So we'll get a date down for them. So many great artists. Like I said, Rob Chadwell. Yeah, it's exciting, you guys. So Thank you. Thanks to everyone on BandLab for watching today. We're so excited we were able to stream to you as well as YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. We're going to leave you with an original song. We have not yet recorded this one, actually. We will. One of those days. You're welcome. That's the name of the song. I threw it in there. Happy accident. Okay. Do you count this off?
No, you do. You start it.
I'm sitting here waiting for you to count it off. It's like, maybe he's not tuned yet. Am I tuned? All right, I'm tuned. I'm tuned. I have volume.
Yep.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I've got a green light, but somebody honks before I go. I've got a missed call, but it's just my mom again, I know. one of those days. I think I'll drive to somewhere I've never been. I think I won't stop until I figure it in. I think too much, I talk too much, I hear but I don't listen enough. But hey, it's just one of those days, and I'll have faith I'll be okay, 'cause I know love, I know will stay until tomorrow. The sun is way. It's just one of those days. It's just one of those days. I'll buy a glass heart for somebody else to break instead. I'll write a new song that's already stuck in my head. It's just one of those days.
Hey, I like that song.
I almost resolved.
I know. I heard that.
I accidentally hit the low E. I was like, no. It's an unresolved song,
Mm-hmm.
lyrically and musically. Well, thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Again, you can catch this live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific. That's when we do our recordings and have our chats with our guests and play our songs and do all the fun stuff. You can watch that on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or Twitch, and then or Bandcamp as well. Or sorry, not Bandcamp, BandLab as well. And then when we edit it down on Tuesdays, check your podcast apps. We'll be on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and Stitcher, with more soon to come. So please do give a follow or a subscribe. If you like what you hear, leave a review, leave a rating, and we sure would appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you guys want to listen live, we do stream with more music and less talking on Thursdays in just a regular old live stream format on YouTube and Facebook and probably BandLab and Twitch as well. So
Yep, that's at 5 p.m. Pacific.
5 to 6, just
Yep.
an hour of songs. So we'll see you guys then. And thanks for being here. Love you lots.
Bye, guys. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Bye, y'all. Do it in your vampire voice.
Farewell, food. I don't know why I need to do jazz hands. I don't know.
I love that you called him food.
I'm a vampire, you know.
This episode is brought to you by Welch's Fruit Snacks.
Oh, there they are.
Oh, yeah.
Yay.
I always have these.
See you guys soon.
Bye.